This is the Baseball Tonight podcast for Friday, August 21st, 2026, presented by La Quinta by Wyndham. I'm Buster Olney. Taylor Schwenke is working from Cape Cod today. And today we'll be talking with Jorge Castillo about what's next for the Los Angeles Dodgers, whose owner, Mark Walters, is under investigation. Paul Embikides will be here to discuss the transcendent excellence of Pete Crow-Armstrong and his other great topics. But first, a few notes from Thursday's games. What a wild finish in Cincinnati. The St. Louis Cardinals were down to their last out, trailing 5-4 in the ninth inning when this happened.
Reddy's in center. The ball is sailed to left center. Friedel shading his eyes. Myers makes the call. Myers off the ball. Fermin scores. Wynn scores. And the Reds trail. That was ball game and a dropped fly ball. The Reds are down 6-5 in the ninth.
St. Louis went on to take a 10-5 lead, and they would hang on to win 10-9 for the victory. Cardinals staying alive, 3 games over 500. Shane Bieber was excellent for 7 innings for the Blue Jays, and Toronto beat the slumping Rays 5-1. Kazuma Okamoto got a big hit.
Whoa, here is a blast to left field. Hammered on out of here by Kazuma Okamoto, and the Blue Jays take the lead.
That was his 26th home run. Top prospect Cade Anderson was called up by the Seattle Mariners, and he'll start against the Cubs on Saturday with Brian Wu dealing with some shoulder issues. He got pushed back his next scheduled started day. Ketel Marte, who went AWOL briefly from the Diamondbacks early this week, was placed on the injured list. The Yankees faced Taylor's Orioles, and it didn't go well for Baltimore.
6th inning, Luis Garcia Jr. swings at the first pitch and hits it deep to right field. Tavares back, track, wall, see ya. A home run for Garcia. His second as a Yankee, and the Yankees lead 4-1. High fly ball, left center and deep. Beavers back, going back, looking up, see ya. Going the other way, a home run for Spencer Jones, and the Yankees lead 5-1.
The final score there was 6-1. In the race for the third wild card in the American League, the Twins and Rangers are tied with 63 and 65 records. The Blue Jays are a half game behind them. There are 7 teams within 3 games of that third spot. We might see a team make the playoffs despite an under 500 record, and Hembo will tell you about the last time that happened. Let's get to it. The weekly guest is brought to you by 8 Sleep. Jorge Castillo covers baseball for ESPN. Jorge, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Buster. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm overlooking Lake George as we speak.
I'm not
beautiful.
doing that. I'm jealous.
Well, you just got back from vacation. I don't want to hear from you.
Los Angeles was nice.
Yeah, okay. Well, you're out in L.A., and the talk of baseball underneath the discussion about the results that are going on in baseball is what's happening with Los Angeles Dodgers. Mark Walters, we know, is under investigation. He just offloaded the Los Angeles Lakers, after 1 year of ownership. And, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I wouldn't be surprised if with the Dodgers, if you see a similar thing happen where he winds up moving off some debt there as well. And he clearly, Mark Walters is trying to generate cash.
Yeah, based on what I've read, what's been reported, he needs money. So he sold the Lakers for $12.5 billion. Reports out of England are that he and Todd Bowley are getting rid of their shares or selling their shares of Chelsea. I'm not a big Prem guy. I'm a newly declared Fulham fan as of last year. I don't follow the Prem too closely, but it sounds like he is looking to sell because he needs cash. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with the Dodgers. I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen with the Dodgers. Stan Kasten last week told reporters, hey, this is a Lakers deal. This is not a Dodgers situation. I don't know if he knows that. I don't think anyone knows that. Things can change. Things could reach the point where it becomes a Dodgers situation because they're forced into a Dodgers situation, just like it wasn't a Lakers situation. No one thought the Lakers were going to be sold. Mark Walter bought that team less than a year ago, believing that he was going to be in it for the long haul. He was overhauling that front office, he did that. He was overhauling the scouting. He had Lon Rosen brought over. Farhan Zaidi was brought under the wing. Andrew Friedman was helping out with the basketball stuff. He thought he was in it for the long haul, and all of a sudden he wasn't. So it's hard to predict. It's hard to say one way or the other whether the Dodgers are going to be sold, or whether they're not going to be sold, whether they sell a share. We don't know that for now, but it's a super interesting development considering where the Dodgers stand in the sport, two-time defending World Series champions, the money that they have spent, all that deferred money, the angst that they've created among different fan bases across the country with the CBA looming, the negotiations and the salary cap. It's a lot going on right now in late August.
Yeah, you touched on the fact that the labor agreement, we don't know what's going to come out the other end. There's going to be a significant change to baseball's economic system. And what is that going to look like? And will there have to be adjustments made by the Dodgers moving forward in terms of how they do business? I've heard speculation with folks with other teams who are like, you know what, they're going for it now because they don't know if they're going to have exactly the same advantages as they go forward. Here's the part that I wonder about. A year ago, as we sat here and you talked about this possible labor confrontation, that you're looking for people on either side who might, uh, whether you want to call them leaders or dissenters, however you want to put it. It felt like that Mark Walters was a candidate to be a guy as the leader of the most, probably at this moment, the most powerful big market team in baseball, to push back against the idea of a salary cap. That if they're in a room and you might lose part of a season, that it would be natural for people who lead the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers say, "Hey, hold on here. What are we doing? We're going to lose part of a season, because we're going to fight for a salary cap." Whereas you could see small market owners maybe be more likely to go along with that, if that makes sense. Well, now it feels like Mark Walters is off the table as a potential leader in that situation because he's got a whole lot of other stuff going on. Does that make sense? Like I sort of, you have your mental checklist of people who could be that dissenter to stand up the way Peter Angelos did, right? 1995 in spring training, he's like, the Baltimore Orioles are not doing replacement players. And behind the scenes, there were other owners, big market like George Steinbrenner, pushing back against the idea of interrupting the season. Uh, I I thought Mark Walters might be that guy, but it doesn't seem like he's in the situation where he could do that.
Yeah, at least publicly so far, the owners are providing this united front because Hal
Right.
Steinbrenner and Steve Cohen have not come out against the salary cap, the
No.
idea of one. They're saying we'll do whatever is best for baseball, whatever we owners believe is best for baseball. Now, if push comes to shove mid-March, and we're closing in on what should be opening day, and an agreement hasn't been made, and maybe these guys do step up and say they go anti-salary cap. But for now, it sounds like it's a pretty united front.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark Walter, again, we don't know for sure if he even owns the Dodgers by then. Like, that's just a fact. We don't know. So, for him to have that sort of responsibility, yeah, I don't see that happening, at least for now. Um, it's actually interesting, Buster. I was actually talking to a couple executives over, before I went on vacation last week, just on about this idea of a salary cap, and obviously that caps player payroll. But a team like the Dodgers, their advantages come be way beyond you know, funding player payroll. It comes in the R&D departments and how, the food they provide to minor leaguers and their travel. They're the only team in baseball that has two planes, that they travel with
Right.
two planes. Things like that the Dodgers and teams like the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees will still stand to have a pretty significant advantage if they remain sort of where they are now with the funding, the owners, these billionaire owners that they do have. So that's another interesting thing, and that's another possible area where the Dodgers, we're not sure where they go from here. Maybe Mark Walter doesn't sell the team, but maybe he's like, you know what? Maybe we don't do two planes from here on out. Maybe we don't go all in as much as we had in the R&D department. Maybe we don't do. Maybe we pare down the front office a little bit. I don't know, things like that. Not where you don't necessarily sell the team, but I do wonder operationally how the things change moving forward because that's a significant advantage, and I think it's just not discussed enough. Obviously, player payroll is a huge advantage. Being able to pay these guys and go over the salary, the luxury tax and the CBT tax, whatever you want to call it. But these other advantages do exist, and I wonder how that affects things.
Yeah, and if Walters winds up selling the team, then think about the process or selling his a big share of the team. Think about the process that's got to take place they have to work through Major League Baseball on that. And so Major League Baseball is not going to say, yeah, go ahead, sell to that rogue owner,
Yeah.
like a Mark Cuban like personality who's going to be the loud guy in the room to disagree with what they want. That's not what's going to happen. That's not good. They would definitely try to shape that decision as to who would get in power again, because naturally you'd have the big market teams pitted against the small market teams. That's been the history of this. And it might be that the Dodgers' influence in this sort of situation is going to be muted this time around because of where Mark Walters is. All right, I wanted to give you a chance to weigh in on my thought. Earlier in the week that with all this question of Mark Walters and his ownership being in a state of flux, we read the language from his contract the other day. Walters would essentially have to be forced out to give an opening, in theory, to Ohtani. But I think Nez Balelo owes it to his client to explore whatever opportunities out there because he's so undervalued in his contract that he has with the Dodgers. What do you think?
Yeah, the first thought when it comes to this question is, all right, well, if there's a salary cap next year, does Shohei Ohtani want to opt out? Can he get this kind of deal? I know it's only $2 million up front, $68 million, every year from like 2036 on, whatever it is for 10 years. But can he get that kind of deal in a salary cap situation and that kind of economic structure? Second of all, Otani's been a different cat here for a while. He could have waited a little longer in Japan to maximize his earning potential here in the States when he came over, and he chose to come over here early, sign with the Angels, and was making the minimum, and then our money, and he could have just made a lot more money if he waited. He chose not to, and then he obviously chose this route of getting $2 million up front. Now this guy's making a ton of money off the field. This guy, from what I haven't been in Tokyo. I went to Tokyo once in 2021. I haven't been back. But what I hear, this guy's like LeBron James meets Taylor Swift out there. So this guy's making a ton of money. He's everywhere on every billboard. He's just there. He's just everywhere. Now, that's the third part of this. Yeah, on paper, he probably, if there's no cap next year, maybe the team out there that says, you know what, he can make a lot more money. We can give him a lot more money. Does Ohtani make as much money not being a Los Angeles Dodger? Because the Japanese community, the Asian community in Los Angeles is so prevalent. That team has become Tokyo's team. That team has become Japan's team. It's not, Ohtani's a big chunk of it, but they also have Yamamoto and Sasaki. That's become sort of the team of that country. They created this revenue stream that's allowed to have these advantages that they do have. So those are sort of three things I think about. Maybe Ohtani just opts out and says, hey, I want to try something different. Maybe I want to challenge myself, because there's something else about Shohei Ohtani. He loves challenging himself, whether it's pitching or going for, the 50-50, trying this two-way thing to begin with. He loves challenging himself. So maybe that's the route he takes. But, it's hard to see Ohtani going somewhere else. I just think
I agree with you.
The Dodgers situation is kind of just perfect for him. Just the way it works on and off the field. They let him do what he wants, whether he wants to pitch, two-way, whatever it is, and they're winning. They win all the time, and I think Ohtani, that really is what he wants to do. He wants to win.
And I don't think he needs to leave the Dodgers, just to be clear, to get more money. I think he needs to threaten to leave the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it
That's
might
fair.
be, and here's the thing, is that I think let's say, and I think Ohtani's like in the same position we see some NFL wide receivers occasionally every year will threaten to sit out, threaten to make noises, threaten to do those type of things. If that's going to happen, November. Before we're going to see all these free agents like Tarek Skubal, there's going to be a rush of the elite guys to get deals in the books before December 1st. And if you're Ohtani, if you're Nez, you're making noises starting November 1. Like, let's go. We're rewriting this. Maybe it's less deferred, but I'm going to get more money up front out of my deal. That's got to happen before we get into the labor situation, so that whatever happens, whatever economic system comes out, that deal would be grandfathered. So I think maybe November is definitely going to be the month of Tarek Skubal. It might be Skubal and Ohtani, if in fact Ohtani decides he's going to make some noise about what his contract looks like. All right, let's talk about Max Fried. He goes on the injured list with a bone bruise. I think the Yankees are downplaying it a little bit, but I mean, look, the calendar is the calendar. Taylor loves it when I say that phrase. It's a real concern for them.
Oh, 1000%. This is a guy who was their top pitcher last year. Now you could argue it's Garrett Cole and Cam Schlittler, their top two guys, but Fried, whether he's in 1, 2, or 3, the Yankees need him, in my opinion, to win the World Series, because Carlos Rodon's been up and down. He's had his issues with the elbow over the last year. He just got back. So that's sort of concern. Ryan Weathers has been really good as of late. Will Warren has not been. So I think this is definitely a concern. This is, you gave this guy $18 million before last season to be a frontline guy. You expect him to be a frontline guy in the early part of that contract, right? This is the part of the contract where you expect him
Right.
to be elite and healthy and ready to go. The back end is you're like, all right, cool. We'll have to bite that bullet when we get there. But this is concerning for the Yankees, who have a lot of sort of moving parts right now. A lot of it's like, hey, if this, and this happens, we're going to be full and ready to go for October. You know, that that's a lot of thises. That's a lot going on there. So a lot of ifs, and yeah, Fried getting hurt again. It doesn't seem as severe as the first time. He's already playing catch. Aaron Boone sort of, he's told reporters, hey, it's not as bad as last time, but still not a good thing when you hear elbow again.
Well, and you don't know how he's going to react when he ramps back up.
Yep.
That's part of the uncertainty that you have here. So when I saw you last week in Seattle and was around the team before the game with the Mariners, definitely got the feeling that while they believe that Aaron Judge is going to play, they truly have no idea what's coming out the backside of that. Like what what they're going to get from him, how he's going to respond day-to-day regimen. I mean, it just feels like the biggest X factor. If you'd, I'm already getting an idea for an article for ESPN.com. Biggest X factors going into the last 6 weeks of the season. That would have to be number one, especially given the mediocrity of the American League. What is Aaron Judge going to be?
Well, 1,000%. And I said the Yankees need Max Fried to win the World Series. I think Aaron Judge, if they don't have Aaron Judge, I don't think they can win the World Series. Now, I know the pitching's been awesome and stuff. The offense has just not been very good. It hasn't been good enough. And in October, you're facing the best pitching all the time. So I think Aaron Judge is having him healthy, not just healthy, being Aaron Judge or close to Aaron Judge is just paramount for this team. He is a game changer, and we've seen it this year. You can make an argument he should be a down ballot MVP candidate. Like this guy's been he's valuable. When you took him out, they struggled. I know Giancarlo Stanton hasn't been around for a lot of the year, and Cody Bellinger's been out here for about a month, but Aaron Judge is super valuable, and he spoke, recently about this when he was cleared for his light activity. He's actually been cleared for baseball activities here pretty recently in terms of just starting to swing the bat and started to ramp up a little bit. He hasn't played since May 31st.
Wow.
It's going to be 3 months. He's going to need some time to just swing the bat for a while. And you start your progression. You take dry swings, and it's off a tee. And then you face some pitching, and then you face live pitching, and then it's going to take a while here. And then when he gets back, he has to get into the game shape and figuring all that out. So it's a lot. The Yankees, they keep saying they're confident, but like you said, what do we see on the other end of this? Does Aaron Judge have enough time to get ready for October?
And on top of that, given the nature of his injury, where it's essentially the impact of a stress injury that's built up over time, it's not like he can rush back. It's not like you're binging for a final exam and you can suddenly put in a whole semester's worth of work in 2 days. He can't do that. Like he can't take 1,000 swings as he gets ready, on a given day to return to action. He's got to slow play it the whole time and listen to the doctors and get feedback in exactly what's going on with his body. So that's one to watch. Steve Cohen, the Mets owner, spoke with reporters. What was your takeaway after you saw what he had to say?
Well, he said what I think everyone has been saying here for the last few months was they just took on a lot of risk. They changed a lot of things at once. Less than a week after the season ended, they pretty much fired Carlos Mendoza's entire coaching staff. Antoine Richardson also eventually left. He was
Jeremy
a big
Hefner.
time Jeremy Hefner. I mean, Antoine Richardson was like he played a big part last year. Juan Soto stealing all those bases, and their base running was really good. And he decided to leave for Atlanta as well. And then after that, they trade Nimmo for Simeon, and then Alonso signs with the Orioles, and then Diaz. It just things like snowballed. I wish I was there to ask him if they had thought of, the process of that, if that was their intention going into it to take on all this risk, or if it kind of just happened and then by the middle of January they look around like, oh my God, this team's so different. It's probably not the best thing. But a lot of things needed to go right. You bring on a new coaching staff, you bring on a bunch of new players, and this isn't a small this is New York City. Some guys do not adjust to New York City at all. Sometimes they take a little time to adjust. Some guys thrive right away. I think we saw a couple guys, and Bo Bichette being one of them, in my opinion, who he took us some time to adjust here. A guy who's only played in Toronto, came here. There's a lot going on. The pressure. He's basically on a 1-year deal, and he's looked really good as of late. Because the team, I mean, the entire team has looked really good as of late, which is funny after the trade deadline. But I just think they took on a lot of risks, took a lot of took some chances, and then you layer on Francisco Lindor getting hurt and Soto getting hurt, then Lindor, then Soto again, and it was just a lot going on, and Trent, things went wrong. And I think them not having the cohesion um, that a team usually has hurt them on top of the injuries.
Last one for you. My takeaway, just reading his comments about David Stearns, is that it's sort of like, yeah, I believe in David Stearns. I think he's a really good baseball executive, and we're moving forward. And at the same time, it feels like that David will be on double secret probation going in 2027. Does that make sense? Like he's not going to
Yeah.
come out and say he's in trouble, or we're going to replace someone. But I think that going into next year, what happened this year, it wasn't like he came out and said, David Stearns, brilliant job. We didn't hear that out of Steve Cohen.
Oh, well, yeah, because that would have been a lie. you know, so he knows. But you know what though? This last month has been encouraging for the
Yeah.
Mets. I know it's like it doesn't matter, blah blah blah. This offense, they only traded one position player, and this offense looks really good without Juan Soto, who says he wants to come back. Sean Manaea's sort of bounced back. Nolan McLean's had a really strong first full major league season. They need to get starting pitching here in this offseason. I think they're going to be huge players for Schoolboy. The bullpen, they traded up basically their entire bullpen. Luke Weaver, Brazaban, Minter, Rayleigh. They traded a bunch of guys from there. The best teams in baseball, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Guardians, the Brewers, the Rays, what they do best, not what they do best. One of the things they do best is they figure out the bullpen with a bunch of guys you don't even know, you don't even know their names. Like for the most part, they find guys off the scrap heap. They convert starters to relievers. You can look at the Yankees. Brett Hedrick and Paul Blackburn are playing huge roles in the back end of the bullpen. That kind of thing needs to happen for the Mets. The Mets need to figure out the bullpen by, using that R&D department, the pitching lab, all the stuff that they talk about, and patching that together for next year. Not going out and spending a bunch of money on another reliever. Figure it out with guys in-house or with guys who you see, hey, we see a role for this guy. We see this guy's stuff. We think he can be a guy in our bullpen. I think that's going to be big for them. Because Steve Cohen earlier this year said that David Stearns has to get creative. Well, that's one way to get creative. And I think there is going to be some pressure on David Stearns. At the same time, Steve Cohen doesn't want the Mets to be viewed as this team that just like cycles through guys in the front office. He doesn't want that image. He said that. I think he's going to give David Stearns a long leash here. But if we're, a year from now, if this Mets team is not in playoff contention, but David Stearns is in trouble.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they add another front office person, not to be at the same level as David Stearns, but someone who would be more front facing.
A GM. They don't have a GM.
They don't have a general manager, and you get someone and there certainly are teams where the general manager actually takes on the bulk of the work with the media. And I wonder if, we might see that. So there's a lot to be determined for the Mets, and Jorge, I'll have you back on and we'll talk about that. Thanks for doing this.
Sounds good, Buster. Thank you.
That was the weekly guest brought to you by 8 Sleep, the smart mattress cover trusted by some of baseball's greatest. Use code BASEBALLTONIGHT for up to $350 off. Hembo is Paul in Bikini. He's a content producer on the show Get Up. We have him here every week. And Hembo, I need your logical brain here, okay? I need your analytical brain to try to make sense of the race for the third wildcard team in the American League. And I'll give you, yesterday I did a power rankings thing with Jesse Rogers, and Jesse tried to apply logic and reason. And he talked about strength of schedule as he was sorting through it. I'm like, Jesse, my response to him was, Jesse, you can't make sense of this. There are too many mediocre teams, and it's just a series of random coin flips. What do you think?
I think that there are 7 mediocre teams, and it is a series of many coin flips. Buster, when 7 teams are separated by 2.5 games with effectively 5 weeks to go in the regular season, I don't view this as being the kind of thing where, holistically, that I view this as like this compelling race to determine who's the 6th and final wild card team in the American League. I view this as the Like, who's the worst bad team that can wind up sneaking in? That's kind of how I view this. It should be a 6-team round robin to determine who gets slaughtered in the first round of the playoffs. But as we well know, given how mediocre the American League is overall, you could imagine a world in which one of these 6 teams not only gets in, of course, but wins a best-of-3 series and goes on a run, because that's baseball. So, on one hand, Rob Manfred probably says to himself, this is exactly why we wanted to expand the playoffs, because we juiced the pennant race. On the other hand, what we're doing is introducing mediocre baseball to October, which is supposed to be a time for which you only see good baseball. And so I'm kind of torn on that. I'm not sure what people around the industry are telling you about the race. I don't find it nearly as compelling, though, as the standings say I should.
And it always feels like in my brain, I'm like, well, the team that should emerge from this pack of 7 is Seattle. Like the sleeping giant thing will just continue on and on and on until they're actually eliminated. They're the team. I mean, when I saw the Detroit Tigers the other day in Pittsburgh and I was talking to members of their staff, they're like, well, there's the Mariners. Like everyone waiting for the Mariners to take off and grab this by the throat because of what we saw, last October. We'll see. When's the last time a team made the postseason after a full season under 500?
I mean, that's literally never happened, Buster. I looked
Wow.
up the worst record by any playoff team in the history of baseball. Of course, we know the postseason has many more teams now than it used to. Top of my head, in 2020, we had 2 teams that got in at 29 and 31. In 1981, we saw the Royals get in with a sub 500
Strike shortened
record.
season. Right.
That's
That
right.
was a strike shortened season.
So that doesn't count, I guess. And then the next worst record, if you will, were the 82 and 80 Padres in 2005 that got in. So quite literally never. So these 7 teams, one of which is very likely to get in finishing under 500, is probably going to make some sort of dubious history. And who knows, maybe go to the World Series anyway.
You agree with me? Like you look at the field and go, well, it should be Seattle. It really should be Seattle.
It really should be Seattle, Buster. And you also have to consider the context if we're going to be serious about this, even though it is an unserious race. When you consider how their season ends, all they really need to do is continue treading water, or better yet, remembering that there are 3 outs in every single inning. Because from September 11th on, Buster, they've got 3 against the A's, 3 against the Angels, 3 against the Rockies, 2 against Houston, and then they finish up with 4 home games against the Angels. They should absolutely clean up, because only one of those series, and it's a 2-gamer, is against a team that is going to be playing meaningfully at that point. So if the Seattle Mariners can't sneak into the playoffs, given the constitution of the American League wildcard standings and their schedule, I'm not so sure what you could say about that team, which was entering the season, who Vegas, not you or I, Vegas tabbed as the favorite to win the American League.
Really amazing.
Sure is.
And we will see if they can dig themselves out. All right. Earlier this week, we saw a contested home run call in Baltimore. Pete Alonso thought he hit a home run, but then the umpires ruled foul. It was, I think, apparent that it probably was fair, but there wasn't a replay that clearly made that case. And so Pete Alonso, Chris Bassett, after the game, they're like, hey, it's 2026. Why don't we have this resolved? And I got to say, I agree with him, Hembo. What about you?
I agree with him, too. I don't know that it was fair. I think it was fair, just like most everyone else says. The problem is that he hit the ball so freaking high that you can't exactly tell where it crossed the foul pole. And so I suppose I understand Major League Baseball making that ruling that it was upheld, although I will say, if they called it fair on the field, they certainly would have concluded that it was a fair ball there, too. They just weren't comfortable changing the call on the field. But we live in a world now in which we're overturning strikeouts on tenths of inches. So the idea that we can't create an imaginary line straight up from the foul pole to determine where this ball crossed in the stadium strikes me as unlikely. I would imagine that Major League Baseball's team of engineers can probably cobble that together, I don't know, this morning. Because what I think about is if the Baltimore Orioles wind up missing the playoffs by 1 game, or God forbid this kind of thing happened in a postseason game, it would be a nightmare for baseball. Not that things like this didn't happen before, but we, of course, didn't have the technology before. So I agree with Pete. I agree with Chris Bassett. Let's remedy this for the future if it's technologically possible, and I would have to imagine that it is.
Yeah, and they could focus on that as they did the first time we saw replay used in baseball. It was implemented in midstream, like as the season was going along. You could do the same thing here, and work to do that. And so hopefully this is a play that leads to some change, because the Orioles certainly in that moment, it looked like, suffered because of it, and it potentially altered the playoff race. All right, let's talk about the ABS system. First year, I think everyone agrees it's generally a success. How could you make it better?
Buster, I have sort of a galaxy brain idea that I've been brainstorming for quite some time that I'm just going to put to you on a platter and ask you to react. So right now we got 2 challenges, of course. My proposal will be that we expand from 2 to 3 per team. And in doing so, I think we should add to ball strikes, we should add to add safe out. So what I'm saying is everything that happens on the field should stay on the field. We know that the challenge system works, in part because we have the technology, in part because, of course, it enables us to get more calls right, which is the most important thing. But to me, the most important thing of all is that it pits the umpires and the players against one another in real time. That's the genius of it. So they're standing there, they're watching the video board, and they're determining which of you is right and which of you was wrong. That is, of course, runs contrary to this nonsense that we do right now with safe out, where the manager stands on the top step anytime that there's a close call, turns around, watches his bench coach on a phone with someone making less money than I am, up in a video booth, and in 15 seconds trying to turn around video as quickly as possible, relaying that to the bench coach, relaying that to the manager, and then he puts his hands over his ears, or maybe he decides to wave it off. It is steadfastly ridiculous, and it always has been. We have the technology to determine whether or not these guys are safe or out, and we can do it very quickly. What I want to see is you're tapping your helmet or you're tapping your cap on the field. If you feel that the umpire has gotten safe or out incorrect within 3 seconds, you're doing that. And we're going to keep these analysts off the field. Here's what I think, Buster, to sort of land the plane. Major League Baseball, at the All-Star break, implemented these new crackdowns on using iPads in the dugout because they learned that people were using AI to make in-game decisions, which of course is ridiculous. What happens between those lines should be sacred on a baseball field. I don't want someone that looks like me wearing a collared shirt making a decision in real time whether or not we're challenging a safe out call on a field that happened in real time. That was bang, bang. So what I want to see, Buster, is the challenge system expanded from 2 to 3 and to add safe out to the challenge system. And I don't think there's any obvious reason why it can't happen and can't happen ASAP. What say you?
So, I think it's brilliant, and I think you put it all in one bucket, is what you're saying. Over the course of a game, whether it's ball strike or safe out, you can have as many as 3 challenges, and maybe all 3 are safe out calls. Maybe, all 3 are ball or strike calls. But those challenges, and on top of that, I agree with you, because it's so often you'll see a team have a challenge overturned, and they'll say, well, and it's actually the way it's written up is, Aaron Boone, he challenged and he turned out to be wrong. As you and I know, it's not him.
No.
Somebody else is giving him the word. He's the manager. Have him challenge.
Buster,
right?
there are so many unnecessary parties involved in this. What happens between those lines is sacred. I want baseball players to be playing baseball. I want umpires to be umpiring baseball. There is no place for that kind of technology.
Managers to be managing.
Correct. Let the things that happen between the lines stay between the lines. I feel strongly about this. And from the perspective of entertainment, there is nothing less entertaining than watching Aaron Boone turn around, watching some guy on a phone talk to another guy on a phone upstairs. That's not baseball. That's chicken bleep. I don't think there's any reason for us to maintain it in the game. So we're giving 3 challenges. We're going to add safe outs to them and allow the players on the field to decide whether or not they were safe or out. And we'll put players versus umpires on safe out on the Jumbotron, and they'll figure it out for themselves.
I'm co-signing. And the managers can make that decision in real time as to whether or not they're challenging. It would also end the practice of the players want to place close call, turning to the dugout and waving a finger. No. Challenge. Like they're on the field. And it's gotten, that reaction to me has gotten to be as annoying as when you have soccer players flopping.
Yes. Buster, Javier Baez has never been out before.
Right.
And what we'll now discover is that he's out most of the time that he's called out, like everyone else. These umpires, what we learned this year, are a lot better than the public thought. And I think when it comes to the safe outs too, and the players on the field that want to contest everything, is they'll learn the exact same thing. And candidly, it will entertain us in a way that right now we're not being. And I think that would go a long way in improving the entire nature of this challenge system and the product that we put forth.
All right, that sounds great. Pete Alonso, I mentioned him. We were talking about that home run that he lost, the fair foul call the other day, but he's having a spectacular season regardless.
Spectacular. I mean, you and I spoke last week about the nature of the first base position, and I posited my theory that it is a position that is now very much undervalued in baseball, in part because of WAR and the components that we discussed there. And Buster, there is not a player in baseball right now who WAR targets more acutely than Pete Alonso, who only plays first base. He's merely average at doing it. And so when you look at his career holistically, through a modern lens at least, it doesn't look that impressive. He's never had a 5 WAR season, according to Fangraphs. He's total 24 in his career to date. Just for some context on that number, that's 31st since he entered the league in 2019. He's sandwiched between Willie Adames and Cody Bellinger. And you just can't possibly convince me that Pete Alonso is the 31st best player in baseball since 2019. You know why? Because he inflicts a ton of damage on the baseball, which there aren't 31 other guys that can do that better than he can, Buster. It's a .514 career slugging percentage. Keep in mind that when he entered the league, righties were slugging .434 league-wide. That number is down to .396. Buster, that is the sharpest 7-year decline on record. It's remarkable when you consider how well he's hitting, how right-handed hitters across baseball continue to get worse and worse. And my favorite part about Pete Alonso's game and his evolution is that now every single year he's adding a new club to his bag. Last year we discussed how he's starting to generate a lot more power to the opposite field.
Yep.
Coming off that 2024 homer off of Devin Williams in the playoffs. This year, he's got the highest walk rate in his career. So what Pete Alonso is doing and has done to me is extraordinarily impressive. And had he been born a generation before, we'd be talking about him right now like he's a player destined for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and you really think about, I agree with you. And, as it turns out, man, what he's doing for the Orioles, the Mets certainly could use that, right? And when you really break down his game, I remember talking to some Mets staffers, and they said about his defense, because his defense is much criticized. They basically pointed out 2 things. One, his decisions on whether or not to go for balls in the hole, sometimes he misreads those, right? He's too aggressive at times, going for balls in the hole rather than retreat to first base and understanding where second baseman is going to be. And the second thing is, he's not very good. He has some kind of a mental block yips on throws to the pitcher covering the bag. Those 2 things. Besides that, he actually is really good. Statistically, every year he's among the leaders in scooping balls out of the dirt. There are other things that he does okay defensively, and offensively, he's excellent. And so he is really, if you can live with those things, and you and I have seen, for example, catchers who are not very good at throwing, but they do a million other things well, you feel good about that guy. Teams should feel good. The Orioles should feel good about having Pete Alonso at first base and under contract. All right, Chris Sale this year. I wrote a thing about him that, really, I think he's going to be number 2 on a lot of Cy Young ballots in the for the National League this year. What do you got on him?
Well, so I'm going to say something about Chris Sale that 3 years ago I would have never in a million years imagined I would ever say. But Chris Sale is going to retire as one of the 10 greatest left-handed pitchers that ever lived. And you think about the career arc that we've experienced with him, it's remarkable that he's gotten to this place. We are right now seeing him really have his 3rd consecutive Hall of Fame season after effectively a 5-year hiatus preceded by something like 7 Hall of Fame seasons. If you just look at the last 3 years, his ages 35, 36, and 37 seasons. Buster, he's posted an ERA plus of 175. If you look at every pitcher across the history of baseball, only Randy Johnson has prevented runs at a better clip across those ages than has Chris Sale. Right now he's quite literally as good as he ever was. If you zoom out a little bit and you check out the WAR leaderboard, he's right now sandwiched between Don Drysdale and David Cone. He's 58th among pitchers. So you might say to yourself, how on earth is he cracking your top 10? Buster, WAR doesn't adjust for era. As you know, it doesn't care when you did it. We have research now that demonstrates what you did and when you did it. I ran into some these baseball-crazed math professors at the University of Illinois. They've run this. On a per-inning basis, he's behind only Lefty Grove and Clayton Kershaw among lefties. And cumulatively, he's going to wind up something like 7th all-time between Tom Glavine and CC Sabathia. That's how good Chris Sale is not only right now, but from the perspective of his whole career. But if you're a Braves fan and right now you're sort of mired in this pennant race, you say to yourself, well, that doesn't really impact what's happening on the ground right now, considering how little else they have in their starting rotation. And Buster, we know that Chris Sale has this sort of acute history of finishing seasons poorly, of getting hit hard in the postseason. And so I'd posit to you sort of separately, I don't know that there's a single player on any team whose performance in October is going to more define how far his team goes than Chris Sale. If they don't win game one of whatever it is series that they're playing, what path do they have to win that series? And so, look, you're obviously very encouraged with how well he's pitching right now for the third straight year, but he's yet to throw a single pitch in the playoffs as a member of the Braves. And I think he's going to be critically important for them this postseason.
That's so funny you say it that way because I was talking to Jorge before I spoke with you about coming up with the biggest X factors going into the postseason. Aaron Judge would be number one for me. Chris Sale could be two, or Chris Sale's one, or Aaron Judge is two. Like those two guys, they're absolutely huge. And by the way, tip of the cap to the Atlanta Braves and their new pitching coach, Jeremy Hefner.
Yes.
Chris Sale pitched on 4 days rest for his second start. He pitched on 4 days rest for his third start. And since then, he hasn't had another start on 4 days rest. They have properly rested him this year, given him extra days all along. They're doing it again this week before this big series against the Milwaukee Brewers. And I think that's really helped him this year. And maybe that works to extend his career rather than just sort of drive him into the ground. All right. Pete Crow-Armstrong, when I've been asked about it, I say there now is a gap between PCA and Shohei Ohtani. Not a huge gap, but there is a distinct gap. What do you got on PCA?
So I couldn't figure out how I wanted to present this to you, Buster. So what I wound up doing is I just put together my 5 favorite PCA right now stats, after which you can just double click on the one or the ones that you like the most. I'll just rifle through them and then duck. The first of which is he's got 14 defensive runs saved right now, putting him on pace for 18. Not only would that break his own record, if you will, for a Cubs center fielder for a stat that dates to 03, but it would represent the best fielding season ever by a Cubs center fielder when you look at things retroactively, because as you well know, it's a very challenging place to play center field. Right now, he's doing it better than quite literally anyone in the history of the Cubs. Now, the second thing that I wrote down, Buster, is his slash line at Wrigley Field this year. It's 304, 404, 603. Buster, no lefty has slugged 600 at Wrigley in a season in more than 40 years. That was Leon Durham back in 1984. Buster, you know, that year the wind was blowing out in 1984. It's a very tough place for lefties to hit. And right now he's slugging over 600 there. Number 3, at this rate, he's going to finish the month having gone 2020 with an 1100 OPS since June 1st. Buster, only 2 players have done that over any 3-month span ever. Barry Bonds did it in July, August, and September of 96. And Joe Morgan did it in June, July, and August of 1976. PCA would be the only the third player to do 2020 with an 1110 OPS over any 3-month span. All right, 2 more for you. He's already gotten to 30-30 this year, the 80th such season in the history of baseball. But he also leads the major leagues in WAR. There have only been, of those 80 seasons, 2 other players to do that. It was Mike Trout in 2012 and Mookie Betts in 2018. Truly one of the great seasons in terms of power speed in the history of baseball. And I've left what I think at least is the best for last. You know I like using win probability added, WPA, because it measures how good you were and really how clutch you were. You know, that's a stat that says what's your team's chance to win before this plate appearance and after. It's a hitting stat and it's a pitching stat. PCA's WPA right now is 5.3. Shohei Ohtani's is 5.2 combined. He's got 3 from his hitting, and he's got 2.2 from his pitching, Buster, which is to say, you don't need to construct an argument in which you're even talking about PCA's glove or his legs to construct that argument in such a way that says he's the most valuable player in the National League this season. That's how well he has hit. He has out-hit Shohei Ohtani's bat and Shohei Ohtani's right arm.
and the impact of his defense, that's pretty amazing. And it's neat to see. I just, being around the Cubs last weekend when they played the St. Louis Cardinals and hearing the stories about him, that was really neat. And your last note today, you're touching on Eduardo Perez's favorite player, I think, in Max Muncy.
He is enhancing his Dodgers legend, Buster, seemingly every day, having hit more homers at Dodger Stadium than anyone ever, more postseason homers than any Dodger ever, and of course, some of the clutchest swings in the history of the Dodgers. And so, Buster, I guess I want to sort of headline this or thesis statement this as every dynasty needs a Max Muncy, which is to say, all the great dynasties in the history of baseball have been defined by their superstars. But you can't find one without a Max Muncy on it. One of the players who's not going to the Hall of Fame, who's more than happy living in the shadows, but still had an outsized impact on their dynasties. And so, Buster, what I've actually done is go through each of the dynasties in the history of baseball and found their Max Muncy. And I'll just quickly let you react to each. And for the very last one, I want your pick because you covered those teams. The first one I wrote down are the Miller-Huggins Yankees of the 20s, defined, of course, by Ruth and Gehrig. Their Max Muncy was Bob Musial, a corner outfielder who, of course, was the 5-hole hitter for Murderers Row. He was on all three of those World Series teams and was super clutch in 23 against the Giants. Are you cool with me calling Bob Musial the Max Muncy of those teams?
And now I'm getting, and I'm sort of defining in my head now, you're saying a really excellent player who's not necessarily a Hall of Famer.
None of these guys are going to be a Hall of Famer. I don't think Max Muncy's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Tony Lazzeri was the first guy that came to mind. But now I get where you're going. Go ahead.
I think he was too good. I wrote down next the Joe McCarthy Yankees. Those, of course, defined by Gehrig and DiMaggio and Bill Dickey. Their Max Muncy was George Selkirk, a corner outfielder who was primarily a 5- and 6-hole hitter. He won 5 World Series over that span, hit 2 homers and 36 against the Giants. Are you buying that one?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Next on my list, Buster, are the Casey Stengel Yankees, defined, of course, by Mantle and Berra. Their Max Muncy was Hank Bauer. He was their right fielder. He was their leadoff hitter, hitting the 3-hole sum. He won all 7 of those and played huge in 58 when they beat Milwaukee in 7 games. It sounds like you're on board with that one.
100%. He would show up to Old Timers game when I covered the Yankees, and like the other players loved him, right? With the buzz cut that he had. 100%. That's a great pick.
I got a couple more for you. I wrote down the Charlie Finley A's, of course, defined by Reggie Jackson and Catfish Hunter.
Oh, I know where this one is.
All right. I say their Max Muncy was Gene Tennis.
Okay.
It sounds like you disagree.
No. I thought you might be going with Joe Rudy, but who was really good. But Gene Tennis I'm good with. I had him on all my Stratomatic teams for the exact reason you're going to lay out.
I mean, look, hit 4 bombs and 9 RBIs in the 72 World Series in which he was named MVP. Yep. He hit 7th until Game 7 when they batted him cleanup. So I say Gene Tennis was their Max Muncy.
I like that one. Good on base guy, just like Max Muncy.
Buster the Big Red Machine, defined by Joe Morgan and Pete Rose and Johnny Bench. I view their Max Muncy as Ken Griffey Sr. All right, He occupied the 2-hole. He hit between Rose and Morgan. He played huge in the 75 series against Boston. Are you good with Ken Griffey Sr. as their Max Muncy?
Yep, absolutely. He would be a good one. You could also, they had a couple, right? Davey Concepcion, the shortstop, could be that guy too.
He could. But I'm going to let you choose who the Max Muncy of the Joe Torre Yankees was because
No. I want to hear your nomination. Then I get to tell you you're wrong.
So I wrote down 3 names as possibilities, Buster. The player on which I landed was Tino Martinez. For a variety of reasons, obviously the clutch home runs were very memorable, was on all those teams. I think largely underappreciated with a marvelous bat. I think Bernie Williams was a touch too good for this exercise, but I was ultimately between Paul O'Neill and Tino and wound up choosing Tino Martinez.
So there is a reason, and I think all those guys would be, good choices. Even Bernie, but you're right. I mean, Bernie was a Gold Glover.
Yeah.
He was a batting champion. He was more. But I look. I can tell you this. I ended the book I did on that Yankee team by having the scene of Paul O'Neill cleaning out his locker for the last time after 2001 because of what he meant to that team. And when I've talked about that team in the past, I've always referred to it as the Paul O'Neill, Tino Martinez years. So it's funny you landed on that. That's exactly how it felt. And then once those 2 guys left, and it's why, some people define the dynasty through 2003. No. Once Tino and once Paul O'Neill left with Scott Brocious, with Chuck Knobloch, for all the throwing issues, he was an excellent leadoff hitter, got on base, he scored runs. But once that group of players left the team, it was a very different team. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So I think this was a pretty fun exercise for us. I guess we can print the T-shirts. Every dynasty needs a Max Muncy.
There you go. I like that. And I know Eduardo would be the first guy to buy it because every time we do Dodgers, like, yeah, let's do Max Muncy. Let's talk about Max Muncy. And I'll give you a stat before we go. We've been raving about George Lombard Jr., and his impact. In his first, 2+ weeks in the big leagues, he's +7 defensive runs saved. And I think you and I both view some of these defensive metrics, they could be a little bit flawed, but the impact is absolutely real that he's having at shortstop.
Oh,
So,
dude, I mean, at minimum, they're directionally right. When I watch him play, I don't think him being that good that fast is out of the question. It might be stretched a touch, but he is already among the half a dozen best defenders at that position in baseball. Of that, I can say definitively.
amazing. All right, Hembo, thanks for doing this. Always enjoy a conversation.
Later, friends.
Sarah Langs is a reporter and producer for MLB.com, and every week she joins us for the numbers game.
Number 3.
Joe Adell currently has the longest home run this season for both the Guardians and Angels. No player has finished a season having hit the longest home run for multiple teams in the same season since StatCast began tracking in 2015.
Number 2.
Pete Crow-Armstrong is the 13th player since at least 1900 with a leadoff home run in the next team game after he hit a walk-off home run. He's the first since 2021, Jose Altuve, and the first Cubs player in that span. He's also the first to do so after having a leadoff and walk-off homer in the prior game. He became the 6th player in MLB history to accomplish that feat on Monday.
Number 1.
Just 2 rookies have led at least their league in RBI for a season since RBI became official in 1920. 1950 Walt Dropo and 1939 Ted Williams, both of whom led MLB. Will Sal Stewart become the 3rd? He leads MLB in RBI through Wednesday.
Alrighty, Buster, Bleacher Tweets for a Friday. Buster, I'll have you know, I'm on vacation here. Not yet, I'm still working right now, but on the cusp of vacation. I get up this morning, I got the baby in hand, bassinet coming down the stairs. It's dark. Brody is not happy. And what do I step in? Dolly's poop.
No.
Right at the bottom of the stairs.
I mean,
Direct hit.
oh, and you're coming down. You've got work to do, all kinds of stuff. And it's raining on the Cape for you guys this weekend.
Yeah, we're staying positive around here. I'm trying to be quiet and not melt down while
Except when you're stepping in poop.
I think I was pretty restrained. I'll get the report from my wife whenever she gets out of bed. But yeah, that was a tough L to take right off the bat.
Wow. Well, hang in there.
I thought you'd like that. Let's go to Menachem Diem, sorry there. He writes to cap off our Yankees conversation that they need Aaron Judge, they need Max Fried, but he says, and as you've said, the Yankees, they're being overlooked. 3 of their top 4 hitters injured and still doing very well. Since Stanton's been on the IL, they're 53-46. Since Judge has been on the IL, they're 35-32, and since Bellinger's gone down, they're 12-10. And keep that in mind. That's with that Cole. Riding and Fried, they were never healthy altogether. So there you go. A little more hope for Yankees fans there if they can get right by October.
Yeah, and I think we've said on the podcast that if they're all healthy, like at their ceiling, they're the best team in the American League, right? But there are just so many questions about the Yankees and the health. Like what will Aaron Judge be when he comes back? What will Max Fried be? Will Giancarlo Stanton be a part of that? Who's actually going to be in the lineup and the choices that Aaron Boone makes? But yeah, there is a scenario where the Yankees could go into the World Series as a dangerous team because they have really great pitching. And I told the story, I can't remember which day earlier this week, but I'll repeat it here, that Aaron Boone's, has bumped into so many people who are like, oh, hang in there. I know you guys are grinding. It's a tough stretch because they're scoring so few runs and they play in so many close games. And Booney's always like, yeah, we've won like 2/3 of our games lately. So, it's just a different looking Yankee team because they're not scoring a ton of runs.
It makes it nice when you get to play the Orioles. Big sweep for them there.
Oh, man. The Orioles pulled you back in, and then this happened, Taylor.
Buster, I told you they had to play well for like a week and a half. They had to put together more than one good series, and alas, they could not, as anticipated. So, all good. Let's go to, you guys were talking about the Mariners curse earlier in the week. Jeffrey H. from Houston writes, perhaps the Mariners curse is more about the city itself, maybe Seattle baseball's curse from Jim Button's perceived breaking of clubhouse confidence in his book Ball 4. Perhaps we can call it the Ball 4 curse or the Bouton curse. I'm botching his name there,
Bouton.
Another name.
Yeah, Jim Bouton was his name.
Bouton.
Yeah.
One more here. Joe Ellie, he proposes the Seattle Shipwrecks as a curse name. So a little bit of Seattle talk. So way out of the 3 games out of the wild card, 4 games out of the AL West. Tough times for the Mariners.
I like the ball four curse, and I don't know if I agree with that, but it sounds good, right? Doesn't it
Yeah.
sound good, Taylor? Like I like
Yeah.
the ring to it. Sounds good. That and the funny thing is, of course, it's a completely different franchise, Taylor,
Right.
where Jim Bouton wrote his famous book when he was a member of the Seattle Pilots, who became the Milwaukee Brewers later. But maybe that curse just is attached now to Seattle because he broke the clubhouse confidences.
Jeffrey H. also says it could explain why the Brewers have never been able to win at all. So there you go. Multi-city curse there. I like it from Jeffrey H. All right. That's it for Bleacher Tweets for the week. # Bleacher Tweets, bleachertweets at gmail.com. I'm off all next week. You're going to get a lot of Kenny and Terrence, and yeah, good shows ahead. Good to see you, Buster.
Yeah, good to see you too, and have a great time, Taylor. You earned it. That's for sure. Especially, after all the things you deal with, carrying Brody down in the dark and stepping in poop. Like, I mean, that is not a way to start a vacation. You got to finish strong there. All right. Thanks for watching the Baseball Tonight podcast presented by La Quinta by Wyndham. Tonight, La Quinta, tomorrow you shine. Thanks for listening, and my thanks today to Jorge Castillo, to Paul Embakidis, to Terrence Williams, to Taylor Schwenk. Remember, hate and inequality based on skin color is something we need to fight against every single day.